Good afternoon. You're watching Business World Live. I'm Jess De Los Santos. We begin our broadcast with foreign countries pledging to extend much needed aid to areas battered by Typhoon Odette. These include China, which vowed to send 20,000 food packages to Cebu, Bohol, Negros, and Surigao, as well as Japan, which will deliver disaster relief goods like generators, tents, and sleeping pads. The United Kingdom also pledged 750,000 pounds or around 49 million pesos for affected families, while Canada will be giving financial assistance through Red Cross to help address water supply and sanitation needs in affected areas. The U.S. aid will provide emergency shelter assistance and family food packs to affected families. Meanwhile, we're still getting differing numbers from the PNP and NDRRMC regarding the death toll from Typhoon Odette. Latest data from the PNP shows that the number of casualties from Odette has climbed to 375, while the NDRRMC is reporting a much lower figure at 156. Many affected areas continue to experience a shortage in food and water supplies. These include Siargao, where more individuals have turned to looting, according to Communications Secretary Martin Andanar, who hails from the island. More areas have also been placed under a state of calamity, including Camarines Norte, Cebu Province, Bohol, and Southern Leyte. And this time around, let's have a quick check at how the local bourse closed. You'd see here investors still spoke for a second day as a benchmark. Ended the session in the red once again. You can see right here, the index down close to 8% to 7,167. This again, as we get a clearer picture of just how massive was the damage caused by Typhoon Odette. Fatalities again already topping 370, with more than 300 million pesos worth of agricultural damage. Various areas already placed under a state of calamity. That, of course, already caused a sell-off in the index yesterday. That continues on today. But from here, let's have a quick check at some specific stocks here, particularly Philex. This, as the miner continues to buck the sell-off in the local bourse. This after it earmarked $224 million to develop the Silangan Copper Gold Mine in southern Philippines. Its unit Silangan Mindanao Mining will operate it. The facility is expected to process 2,000 tons of ore daily in the initial stage before eventually reaching 12,000 tons a day. Phase 1 is going to cover Boyongan Deposit, which has 81 million tons of ore and has a mine life of 28 years, according to Philex President Eulatio Austin. Copper and gold grades in Silangan is twice as high than Padcal, which is already nearing the end of its mine life. As you can see right here, Philex again ending the session in the green, up 1.1% to 4 pesos and 70 centavos a piece. That again bucks a sell-off in the local bourse today. Let me just refresh this chart right here. You'd see a number of blue chips still ending the day with huge losses here, particularly BDO, our worst performer for the day, down 2.7%. This as the lender denies making additional provisions in its liability clause after the Mark Nagoya transfers. The bank says a liability clause is a regular compliance in the banking industry. It says that it made exceptions and shouldered the losses not caused by the clients to maintain good customer relationship, even if the bank is not legally liable. Again, BDO down 0.7% in today's session, ending the day at 123 pesos and 60 centavos a piece. A number of stocks losing more than 2% as well. You have Jollibee, Globe, and BPI. On the upside, though, you have the likes of Pure Gold. Again, still an outperformer in today's trade, up by close to 2%. Alliance Global also increasing by 1.7%. Here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. The DICT is eyeing to restore communication lines in areas affected by Typhoon Odette before the year ends. The ICT Undersecretary Manny Caintic says they are currently prioritizing restoration of power in these areas as communication lines will not function without electricity. For the meantime, Kaintik says they have distributed emergency communication equipment like satellite phones, and they are also putting up free Wi Fi sites and tawag centers in areas battered by the typhoon. Meanwhile, Meralco has extended assistance to expedite the restoration of power services in affected areas. The company says it will be deploying a contingent of around 50 engineers and linemen in the province of Cebu, 25 of which have arrived in the province today. That's to immediately help in clearing operations and power restoration. The Philippine Hotel Owners Association says it will launch a donation drive for member establishments affected by Typhoon Odette. Speaking with us earlier here on Business World Live, the association's executive director, Benito Bengzon, says Odette has disrupted the industry's momentum towards recovery. He said several hotels are still temporarily closed after Typhoon Odette's onslaught. Odette ravaged several parts of the Visayas and Mindanao, where 30% of PHO ACE hotel members are located. The group said it would give 100,000 pesos as a startup fund for its donation drive for affected hotel members. By how much is Typhoon Odette also going to derail the property market's recovery, especially as it affected key areas in the Visayas and Mindanao? Let's discuss that with David Lichu, CEO of Lichu Property Consultants. Good afternoon, Sir David. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, we've seen the extent of the damage in Visayas and Mindanao due to Typhoon Odette. How is this going to offset the recovery of the property market outside Metro Manila?
Yeah, it's been heartbreaking to see and know what's going on in the Visayas and Mindanao. Those so many millions of people affected. It certainly will set back the property market in the affected areas by a few months to possibly a year. And fortunately, the property market is fragmented so that the affected areas will be somewhat isolated and will probably not have any repercussions to the rest of the country. We have BPO clients that are struggling to keep staff, and because there's no power, there's no water, and they're running out of supplies of everything, including food, and so it's going to be quite challenging. It's a good thing that many BPOs are diversified throughout the country, and so they're able to allocate a number of those calls elsewhere in the Philippines. But I do hope and pray that we all work as one country to be able to help those in need, so that they will be able to recover from this crisis much faster than than not.
Would you say then that the damage would be more pronounced in the office market compared to the residential market?
I think the damage will be predominantly in the residential sector,
Okay.
because I'm not sure how many of those homes are actually insured, and what safety nets those properties will have in getting repairs. It's really a bayanihan act to be able to pitch in, relatives and friends pitching in to help those in need. And so me and many of my friends here in Manila are sending quite a bit of funding to those who we know in need in the provinces. So the office market will probably be the first to recover. The hotel sector is also hit hard again. Another hit for the hotel sector. It is quite unfortunate what they're going through, but I do hope that most of the hotel owners are well funded, and they should be able to resume construction renovations as soon as power and water is stabilized.
Mhm. Now, this is not the first time, of course, that we've experienced such calamities of such
So
proportions. Based on experience, do calamities like this in a way deter developers from launching new projects?
I think I think it is just a reminder of how important it is to listen to the environment and to build structures that will be sustainable. Meaning, we have to build not for tomorrow, but for the next 10 years, for the long term. And so we really have to look at investing more into the structures to withstand more stress, as we know that the weather conditions are going to get worse and not better. Typhoons should just get bigger, and that's brought about by climate change. It's not anything that we are doing. I mean, not directly to us, but it's really driven by external forces, and we just have to learn to adapt to that. Number two is that we really have to observe very basic environmental good practices such as setbacks, clearances, preservation of mangroves and trees, and landscaping, and other infrastructure projects to be able to support the growth of the country.
Now, from there, of course, that's going to factor into our 2021 numbers for the property sector. But looking so far at your report, we're seeing a contraction, at least in the office market, for the fourth quarter at 105,000 square meters. What's it going to take to turn things around, and when is that going to happen?
Well, if in well, actually there was a blip in the amount of contractions, but if you look at the overall trend, it's been rapidly declining. So what that means is that companies have stopped, or not stopped, but significantly slowed down on the on contracting and laying off people and shrinking their operations here. And that's pretty much a sign of stability. It's a very strong sign of stability. Now, that's also predominantly led by the pogo sector, because the pogo sector has been contracting space at a much slower pace. The BPO sector did experience some contractions, but that is a very small proportion of their total footprint in the Philippines. I think the pogo sector, it's quite possible, it's very likely that the pogo sector is arriving to some sense of stability, and I'm hoping that by the second quarter or third quarter of next year, they will start to grow again.
Okay, we're expecting again some level of growth here from the pogo sector. Are you expecting the industry to somehow boost? I mean, of course, the BPO sector will always take up a lion's share of the demand, but is the office market expected to get a boost from other industries next year? Could that possibly
Yes,
come from the pogo space?
yes. So 2021 office leasing numbers are up by as much as 42% from
Mhm.
last year. It's a very big jump. And we think that it will be meaningfully higher in 2022, because the BPO sector, which was very low, if you look at the last 10 years, the lowest take up they've ever had was in 2020. And even that, they were still growing. Okay, despite all the issues that COVID brought upon us, the BPO sector continued to grow. But it's not just the BPO sector. Despite the lack of new leasing activity for the POGO sector, the online retail companies, the online commerce companies, and many conglomerates continue to expand and take up space. And more of that is going to happen in 2022.
Okay, warehouse leasing, if I'm not mistaken, was also a trend in 2021 and even the earlier parts of the pandemic. Do you expect that to carry through up to 2022?
Yes, definitely. Excuse me. There's this massive transformation that we're going through in Greater Metro Manila, where we are converting core industrial property, such as what you find in C5, in Pioneer, and we're converting many of those geographies into residential or commercial office space. And we're moving those properties, industrial properties, out to the periphery of the city. And that's why you see a boom in warehousing, leasing, logistics in the south. And that's made possible because of the massive injection of infrastructure we are going through right now.
Mhm. Now, from the office market, let's go to the residential space. Condominium take up increased 12% quarter on quarter in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
What drove that?
Stability. I think people have accepted that the worst is over. Yes, Omicron is here, probably another mutation around the corner, maybe 10 mutations around the corner. Who knows? But what I think is clear is that humanity is learning to adapt, to live with this virus, and pushing back the virus to be able to go back to normal as soon as possible. And so we open up the economy. and that increases confidence, and that's why you see numbers, sales volumes rising again. It's been rising since the second quarter of 2020.
Would you say then that buyer confidence would not wane even if we come to the point that there would be an Omicron driven surge?
Even when what again?
Even if it comes to a point wherein there would be another COVID 19 surge due to the Omicron variant?
Well, it's quite possible there will be a surge, but like what we've seen in the last three lockdowns, that investors are pushing back.
Mhm.
And you see that in the sales volume because every segment of the residential sector in both landed house and condominium have been climbing since second quarter 2020. So it's been a year and a half now, and sales continue to climb from that trough. So that's a very good sign that you know, despite Delta to Omicron, that's a big jump of number of mutations and number of lockdowns globally, not just here, and yet the property market continues to push back. So that's a very good sign.
Okay, however, if you try to take a look at new launches here, developers, it seems, are more cautious that took a 37% plunge. Why is that?
They're really just taking a cautious stance right now because of Omicron. They don't really know how that's going to pan out. Of course, in hindsight, 4 weeks after Omicron, we know a bit better now. We're more confident now. And then many developers are just closing the year out and trying to flush out much of their unsold inventory. And then if you look at the high-end market, there's really very, very little product in the market. And I expect new launches to happen in the second quarter of next year. I think many developers are relieved because we saw mall numbers go from 100% to zero, and then to 30%, and today they're about anywhere between 60 to 80%, and that's very, very assuring. So they're just soaking all that up, they're passing all that up, and yes, they are a bit setback. The investor, the mindset of the big developers are a bit setback because of what happened to Odette last week, but they will recover from that as we start rebuilding from the storm.
All right, thank you again for your time this afternoon. Lichu Property Consultant CEO David Lichu. Thank you, Sir David. And good afternoon, and stay safe.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
And before we end our broadcast today, many of our kababayans in the provinces hit by Typhoon Odette have no food and no water. They have lost their homes and some have lost loved ones. Let's make them feel the spirit of Filipino bayanihan. You may send your donations through the following channels now being flashed on your screen. Let's make them feel that through this pandemic, through this devastation, tuloy pa rin ang Pasko. Thank you for joining us this trading day, December 21, 2021. Catch Businessworld live again tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. for the market open and 3:15 p.m. for the market close. I'm Jess De Los Santos. We are One News. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines.